free, be free, proud. Okay. So, very good. So just to review, patriarchy is often used as an abstract noun. I want you to think of it as an active verb. Why? The minute we start thinking of it as an active verb, it allows us to analyze, to call out the active agents that do patriarchy in our lives. Okay. Those people or institutions that patriarch in our lives, now keep in mind, they can be both male and female. Okay. So I would argue since time immemorial, with the advent of religions, that becomes the first set of traditions that patriarch us. What do you mean by patriarch us? It's the following. Often it's said Islam is patriarchal. What I want you to think is, rather than seeing a religion as a set of beliefs as being patriarchal, is who are the active agents within a faith who do that? Whether it's an imam, rabbi, or priest, it's they who interpret the faith and practice the act of patriarchy amongst the believers. When we look at the state level, it's often male politicians or bureaucrats that often will enact patriarchal laws or acts that will disproportionately or put women to a disadvantage. It will disproportionately affect women, put women to a disadvantage. On the societal level, who creates our social reality? On one level, there's the reality of faith. On the other level, there's the reality of power. The next level is our everyday reality. Film producers, media producers, magazine writers, educators, your own family can all patriarch you. Then, and this is for the most part, what women in business is about. It is for those of you who particularly go into the business or private sector. On the economic level, on the market level, what are the active patriarchers, if you will? And they could be anything: traders, bankers, executives, advertisers. If you've seen the series Mad Men, set in the 60s, okay, that for all intents and purposes is a documentary about patriarchers. Okay. Then on a medical level, and here the most obvious case, think of abortion. Access to abortion across the world. Think of the practice of female genital mutilation. All of this is patriarchy on the medical levels. We could almost call it biopatriarchy. Okay. Now, healthcare providers, healthcare managers, patriarchal biopower, okay? Access to gynecologists, access to women's care in developing nations are all examples of patriarchal biopower. With the case of Iran, you see, what is interesting is that 1 to 5 are a continuum, okay? In other words, where does number 1 begin and number 2 start, okay? Whereas in a good number of states, 1 and 2 are supposed to be separate. Supposed to, because like I said, even though in the country like the US where church and state are separate, in fact, we see a heavy influence of church in the state, okay? It's a fiction in the US. Whereas in the Islamic Republic, there is no fiction. 1 and 2 are deliberately a hybrid. Yeah, this is the argument I'm gonna say, is that a lot of the practices in the Islamic Republic have little to do with the faith of Islam and more to do with the secular maintenance of power. This is a regime that for the most part, uses 1 and 2 to penetrate the societal level. At the same time, there's a lot of dissent within the structure. This is also something you have to keep in mind. Okay, so let's begin. The first thing is, how long has the veil been worn in the Middle East? Already there, I set up a leading question. The veil is not just a Middle Eastern tradition. It is a tradition that spans the entire Mediterranean. For the most part, veiling would have been practiced in antiquity from Spain to the Himalayas. Veiling had nothing to do originally with faith. It was a societal marker. And how do we know? It's because we have these primary sources from the past that tells us. This is from the Assyrian Empire. And can anyone give me the name of one great leader in the Assyrian Empire? Sargon. Okay, very good. So you're remembering our history lessons. Okay. The Assyrian Empire, what does this say? If the wives of a man or the daughters of a man go out in the streets, they have to wear the veil. The veil was an indication that you were, for all intents and purposes, the property of a man, whether it was a husband or a father. If you are not, okay, what were you considered? You were harlots or a maidservant. You are not the property of a male father figure or husband. Okay. You could not wear the veil. It was a societal marker. It was a marker of you were the property in the family, in a household. That's an indication of how the veil was worn. And it's practiced throughout the region. In ancient Greece, women wore the veil. In ancient Rome, women wore the veil. In ancient Persia, women wore the veil. Usually to indicate this, if a woman wore the veil and was not a daughter or a wife, she in fact would be whipped and punished. As you see here. What would happen? Her garments would be seized. She would be whipped 50 times. Tar would be poured onto her head. The practice of veiling infiltrates all the way into wedding ceremonies. This is why at a wedding ceremony, when your husband is given you, think of the wedding ceremony, who walks down the aisle? It's the father. And what does the father do? Transfers ownership of you to your new owner, the husband. It's the whole reason you wear a veil in the wedding ceremony. So, what happens as we enter the 20th century? And this is now our concept of the billboard of the state. Exactly 100 years ago, the Turkish Republic was formed. It celebrates its 100-year anniversary literally just a few weeks ago. The formation of the Turkish Republic was supposed to be a repudiation of its predecessor, the Ottoman Empire. And the Turkish Republic was all about, at the turn of the century, states trying to modernize themselves. Now, if a state wants to modernize itself, what is the key four-letter word that a state tries to achieve? It tries to achieve the condition of mass. For a state to be modern, it has to give mass votes to the masses. It has to give education to the masses, but now this is the key. For a state to be truly modern, it has to give education to the masses, both men and women. And that was the great project of the Turkish Republic. The Turkish Republic also wanted to do away in its modernization effort with a pre-modern symbol. And the pre-modern symbol was the veil. Okay. So what the Turkish Republic tried to institute was a project where ideally the masses, the female masses, would abandon the veil to project the new modern Turkish Republic. And this is what you're seeing in this set of images here. What is it saying in Turkish? Okay, so this was called a revolution. And remember from my previous classes how Turkish works. You have to kind of go in reverse. The revolution of women's wear. So in the old days, women used to go out on the street like this, okay, and it's being kind of sarcastic, wearing sheets, okay. The new Turkish woman goes out of her home, and not only that, works. Now, do you see here the semiotics of the new Turkish woman? Keep in mind, this is the 1920s. The new Turkish woman looks like, can you even recognize this hairstyle? We have a word for it. No, not ugly. The flapper. Remember the 1920s movement, the flapper. Short hair was all about women's empowerment, right? Look at the high heels. The Turkish Revolution is going to transform women's lives, right? So this was supposed to represent modernity, okay? Now, the thing is, if a woman went out dressed in this modern fashion, what was she communicating? Not only her empowerment, but the power of the Turkish state, you see. She became a reflection of the Turkish state's ability to basically have women go out on the street and say, I embrace the modernity of the state by dressing in a particular fashion. So you see, on one level, it's about empowerment of women, but on another level, it's also about male politicians also indirectly gaining power. Do you see how they indirectly gain power? By being able to transform the way women appear in public, that is a demonstration of male power at the same time. Okay, so you have to understand, yes, what you had in Turkey for its time, from the 1920s and the 1930s, was a modern state in the sense that the masses that were women also enjoyed rights that weren't enjoyed in other states. In the Turkish Republic, women could vote by this time. When could women vote in France? So by the
1945.
1945. Do you see the discrepancy there then? Okay. Here you have is Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, who I talked about in an earlier class, the founder of the Turkish Republic. This is his adopted daughter becoming a pilot. Okay. Something relatively rare for women around this time. Now, here is Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the person who modernized Turkey. Here is the leader of the neighboring nation, Iran. Iran was ruled by this person here, named Reza Shah. Reza Shah Pahlavi. And Reza Shah Pahlavi saw what was being done in his neighboring, amongst his neighbor in Turkey, and wanted to repeat the same modernization efforts. Reza Shah decided to take the modernization drive just one step further. Whereas in the Turkish Republic, it was supposed to be women in institutions of the state. In other words, in the Turkish Republic, if a woman wanted to go to the university, which was owned by the state, okay, she had to be unveiled. If she wanted to go into a government bureaucracy, a government building, she had to be unveiled. Reza Shah wanted to take that further and mandate unveiling amongst every single Iranian woman. It was forced unveiling. So this is the history of Iran in the 20th century. It goes from an attempt at forced unveiling to forced veiling, so that you can have in some women's lifetime witnessing both efforts. At the end of the day, forced unveiling and forced veiling, according to this person here, the scholar, of Iranian scholar, is all about what? Disciplining the female body. My grandmother's body, like my own later, was marked by corporeal inscriptions of citizenship. In her lifetime, her grandmother had to unveil. In Mina Muallam's lifetime, she had to veil. Both veiling and unveiling are disciplinary state edicts. In other words, it's patriarchy of the state. And often they're enacted violently. Now, keep in mind, this is in 2009. So look at the event I'm building up to shape a feminine civic body. Okay, in other words, what is she saying? The ability to dictate how a woman dresses is a reflection of the power of the state. Now, these are images of Iran prior to its revolution in 1979. So if you can look, if you look at a magazine here, this is how, I showed you images of how the modern Turkish woman appeared in public. This is kind of an image of modernity. It's a magazine showing the modern Iranian woman in the 1970s. It's hard, here what we see is an image of, a foreign woman coming to Iran in the 1970s. Does anyone recognize her? Yeah, that's Elizabeth Taylor in Iran in the 1970s. And then the revolution happened. So again, now we're at the cusp of a regime change. Okay. The old monarchy of the Pahlavis is about to be overthrown. So that you have an image like this, and next I go to an image like this. What is happening here? These are women that are supporting a faction within Iran's revolution, a faction that would go on to establish an Islamic Republic. And I want you to realize what happened in Iran. There are two distinct phenomena. You had a revolution that overthrew the monarch, the Shah of Iran. And then you had a second phase where a faction was able to establish an Islamic Republic. It's very much like the revolution in Russia. You had the overthrow of the monarchy, the Tsar, and then you had a faction within the revolution, the Bolsheviks, who created the Soviet Union. It's the same story in Iran. In this case now, do you see how these women become the new billboards of the new state, veiled and armed? In other words, a depiction of the ideal Islamic Republic revolutionary woman. Now look at the magazine. We go from this magazine to this. The woman holding an assault rifle in her hand, holding the Quran in her other, as well as veiled. This is the new billboard of the state. Okay. And we go from that billboard to the final, an actual literal billboard. The revolutionary woman now is at the same time also domesticated in an image like this. This is now during the Iran-Iraq War. Do you see now the woman? What is the role of the woman during the Iran-Iraq War? Veiled, holding a baby with an offer of peace in her hand. It's her husband who goes to the front lines, while the clerical class, okay, if you will, the clerical politicians encourage the men to go to the front line. It's not dissimilar to images that were released in the United Kingdom during World War I. During wartime, the role of woman is domesticated, is to be confined to the home, taking care of the next generation while the male goes off to the front lines. Now, we jump to the digital era. When we talk about the billboard of the state, this becomes kind of a digital billboard of the state. What are we seeing here are actually stickers, emojis, if you will, reflecting the Islamic Republic's foreign policy, death to America, to the following. Here's, again, the emoji holding a picture of Iran's supreme leader in her hands. And these are the varieties you can choose from, right? So this is all looking at the billboards of the state, or in other words, women being projected as avatars of the state. Okay. And then here I literally take you to a billboard of the state in the Islamic Republic. The hijab is security, and they even write it in English, the veil is security. You see, if you're covered like this, you'll be protected. If you're uncovered, what will you attract? The flies to your sweetness, okay? This, I all argue, is about maintaining the power of a state run predominantly by males. It's not different from any state that seeks to do the same. The only difference is a variety of states leverage patriarchy on different levels. Here we go to Afghanistan under the Taliban. And it's a different patriarchy of the state. Here, the image of the woman has to be obliterated entirely. The face of a woman cannot even have a space in the public realm, you see here. That's the other extreme. And here we go from Turkey to Iran to neighboring Afghanistan. This is women as billboards of the state, in a state that only lasted for 3 years, the Islamic State. And see what it has in common with the Taliban. Again, the face of women have to be obliterated so that even these hair care products, the bureaucrats of the Islamic State literally go and take a black Sharpie to eliminate the face of women in any commercial product because they could be on a shelf sold in the public. Okay. So that when we get to the Islamic State, when I say women are the billboards of the state, both literally and metaphorically, literally here is the Islamic State, more or less dictating women, this is how you have to appear, and here the women conform to that. Who punishes you if you don't dress according to the conforms, the rules and regulations of the Islamic State? Well, there are morality police. A morality police, very good, the enforcers. Okay. Here we have police. Do we have morality police in Spain? We used to, when it was a dictatorship, right? Could a woman wear a mini skirt in the 1950s in Madrid? Segovia. Okay. The morality police, the enforcers, that's patriarchy now. Look what I'm saying, of the state, however. It's patriarchy of the state. Now, can the morality police be everywhere 24 hours of the day? No. Can the regular police, let's say in Spain, be around everywhere 24 hours of the day? No. That's why we have stop signs and traffic lights to regulate traffic. Here, this is the equivalent of the stop sign. Stop, look at this. Are you dressed the way we want you to be dressed? You see, this is the billboard of the state. Now, what I like this image is because when a female militia fighter liberates this town from the rule of the Islamic State, there are no members of the Islamic State there. So what does she strike against? The billboard that was controlling her fellow sisters, if you will. See? Because by destroying the billboard of the state, you're destroying the power of the state to regulate one's appearance. Okay, so now let's go back to Iran. What is the hijab law? It's this. If you appear anywhere like this, you will be punished. The hijab wasn't just about covering your hair, it's about appearing in a certain way. Now, this is the thing. This was the law. But again, I want you to think about your relationship to the law. Sometimes when you drive, is there an official speed limit? But do you yet go over it because you know you can get away with it, right? Okay, exactly. There are a variety of states. You know what the laws are and you know what you can get away with. Technically, this woman here is what would be considered bad hijabi, but she knew under that particular administration in Iran, you have to realize in the Islamic Republic, there are elections and there are changes of government. While the hijab law exists, every administration implements it with varying degrees. So this woman, technically, you cannot wear makeup in public, right? Is she wearing makeup? Yes, because she knows she can get away with it. This is the ideal billboard of the state. This is somebody who is expressing her agency within the state. How does she get away with it? Because she knows there's enough women out there who are also wearing makeup that the state can be overwhelmed. Remember, the state cannot be everywhere at the same time, at every place. Technically, this woman is what would be considered bad hijabi. But again, she knows probably, particularly in this particular neighborhood, she could get away with appearing like that. This is a public place in Iran. Look at how their hair is showing. Smoking in public is frowned upon. But again, times have changed. You know you could get away with appearing like this in Iran. Okay. In other words, what does this show you? That even with the rules on the books, okay, women aren't passive agents in the Islamic Republic. They find ways to resist without getting arrested. Now, look at this speech when I refer to Iran's supreme cleric. By the securitization of gender. It's the following. What if an American politician declared, I am going to declare war against every abortion clinic? He has securitized gender. What do I mean by this? He has taken a place devoted to women's health, Planned Parenthood, and made it a security target. He has put it on a war footing. That's securitization. Securitization is this. It's whenever any politician declares a war on drugs, a war on poverty, a war on coronavirus. You've securitized that phenomenon. Here, Iran's supreme leader, when he says a woman wearing a miniskirt is like a bomb, he is securitizing the way a woman appears in public. He is securitizing the morality of a woman. Okay. Now, look at this. This is referring to the satellite dish. What is the danger of a satellite dish? A satellite dish means this. You can get information outside of Iran, not controlled by the Islamic Republic. And the minute Iranians had satellite dishes, what were they desperate to watch? They were desperate to watch something that would have hurt the morality of the Islamic Republic. This is the second time I'm going to be talking about it today. Mexican telenovelas, Colombian telenovelas were banned by the Islamic Republic. So what did Iranians do? They got satellite dishes to get them without the ability of the Islamic Republic's ability to control them.
Is it to do with how women they also like they weren't allowed to watch them?
Telenovelas?
Yes, I'm just confused as to why if you're saying that women were
Okay, I'll tell you why. What's the problem with the telenovela? Let me pick up my favorite telenovela. I'm joking about it. It's no, we're not gonna do that one. We're gonna do. Let's take another.
it's a lot of
This was the most popular. El Cuerpo del Deseo was hugely popular in Iran. No, what was it? What made it dangerous? It's not just the unveiled woman, it's the nature of social relationships in a telenovela that made it dangerous. Okay. So that's it. It's not just about unveiled woman, it was about morality, you see. Okay. Now, the thing is, technically, satellite dishes were banned. Let me show you this. This is Iran today. What do you see here? Okay. In other words, technically, they're banned. But do you see what every Iranian says? What can you do about it? Go ahead, try to take down every single one of these satellite dishes. Do you see what happens? How you fight back? Is you overwhelm the power of the state. When the state looks like this, it just simply gives up and says, okay, there's only so much we can do. And that was the same thing with women. I want you to think of whether showing a bit of hair, showing a bit of makeup, what's the same strategy you do, the same way you kind of resist the state by overwhelming the state. Now, again, so to answer your question, this is your question. What was the problem with these telenovelas? And this is, again, this is somebody who, a patriarchy of the state. The majority of our population is young. Young people by nature are horny. Because they are horny, they like to watch satellite channels where there are films or programs they can jerk off to. We have to do something about satellite TV to keep society free from this horny jerk-off situation. Okay, that's it. That's patriarchy state. So to answer your question, this is a patriarch of the state.
maybe a man.
Now, the thing about patriarchs of the state is, I want you to look at this following. Shh. Everyone, who is enforcing patriarchy on behalf of the state?
Woman.
This is a woman in the morality police, you see. And again, why is this woman being beaten? Again, because according to her mandate, I have the right to punish this woman because that is bad hijab. Okay. So much so that what gets created in Iran is an app that basically shows you this is where the morality police are, so how to avoid them. If you're coming up on the street, you might want to dress a bit more properly. And then once you're here, you're a bit more free. So, what I just showed you was entirely patriarchy of the state. How does societal patriarchy work in Iran? Let's look at the following. Look at this woman here, and what does she want to do? She wants to race sports cars. Now, look at the patriarchy she faces. Her name is Zohra. She's 29, wears Gucci and Max Mara. She wears leopard skin patterned and a Rolex watch. Technically, all of that is a definition of bad hijabi. But by this time in 2008, she can get away with it. Where does she face the patriarchy? It's in sentence number 2. A couple of men in windbreakers on the sidelines, chain smoking. One of them who is also a race car driver. In other words, her competitor says, if Zohra and Laleh want to operate a machine, they should stick to the washing machines. Then he spits onto the asphalt. Okay, is he a state official? No. That's the societal patriarchy at work. You see, when women went to the streets on Iran last year, what did they say more often than not? It's not just the patriarchy of the state resisting. Patriarchy of the state exists because societal patriarchy allows it to exist. The regime could fall one day, the societal patriarchy would not go anywhere the next day, you see. So that even shows like this, right? Of women, so in other words, trying, practicing to be ninjas like that. Boom, look at that. Even that was on Iranian state TV. But then even Iranian state TV, when the story started to get a lot of attention and go viral, the producers of that segment went back and said, take the clip off the air. I want you to look at this article from The Atlantic that analyzes this. We often perceive women in Iran. We see the hijab and the chador, the veil, on the surface. Women in Iran are stronger collectively and more assertive individually than the Islamic Republic would have us to believe. After all, its laws and restrictions would not be necessary if Iranian women were as powerless as the religious leaders hope. And on another level, I have to say, it's not just religious leaders, it's the people within the state that enforce this. It's because Iranian women do wield power in their society and homes that their country's leaders feel compelled to imbalance the playing field, to pass laws taking that dignity and influence away. This is in 2012. In 2009, a protest movement emerged. And I want you to look at this. These are women technically breaking the law, holding up in their hand a portrait of who they want to be president. In other words, what are they saying? If this man were to get elected, hopefully we could still dress like that and even maybe enjoy more rights. So do you see how women's rights are asserted? You have to work within the confines of the system. Here, look at this woman again, technically bad hijabi, wearing makeup, lipstick, and what is she having here in her hand? Get used to this word, zan, the word for women in Persian. And what is she writing here? Equals man. The word zan, because I'm going to come to it later. On the other hand, Mousavi is the name of the politician. And who is on the other hand? The politician's wife, Rahnavard, who campaigned on the trail with her husband. And the fact that a presidential candidate went on the campaign trail and featured his wife prominently and was proud of her was an inspiration for a good number of Iranian women in 2009. So again, this is how the state wants you to look in the identity forms. Here is a woman looking exactly not like that, asserting her right to vote, to basically say, hopefully I can continue to dress like this, among many other matters that I would like to have improve in my life. Hence, I'm voting most likely for Mousavi. And again, you see similar pictures during this electoral campaign. Now, why are these women protesting? That candidate lost in an election to what most Iranians believed was a rigged election. That the promises he was bringing were too radical for the established elites, and that even before the voting had ended, he was declared the loser. And you see what happened? Women took to the streets. This is one of many protests Iranian women took part in. This wasn't a set of protests that were by nature about issues dealing with gender. This was just simply women asserting their disdain for the person who won and advocating this candidate and basically asking, where's my vote? Where did my vote go? My vote was obviously not counted. Now we've gone far away from the streets of Iran. Where are we? We're in Madrid. We're in Glanbia. And what has just happened a few days ago? An Iranian woman getting out from a metro station was stopped by the morality police. The administration had recently changed in Iran. This woman was taken into custody by the morality police. And during the arrest and during her time in custody, she died. She was a victim of police brutality. It was Iran's George Floyd moment. And just as George Floyd was able to rally Americans regardless of race, so too this woman, Mahsa Amini, was able to rally Iranians regardless of their gender. This was a protest against police brutality. But the thing is, this example of police brutality occurred. Her arrest was based on a law that disproportionately affected one gender over the other. This is a protest in Madrid. And what is the word we see here? Here we are now, it's the year 2022. And that word again, Zan, women. Still mobilizing now in this case, not in a woman's hand, but in somebody's billboard. Zan, Zendegi, women, Zendegi, life, Azadi, freedom. Became the slogan of this new protest woman movement. Right in front of the McDonald's. Yeah, very good. Look at that comparison. In other words, from 2009 to 2023, what has not gone away? The woman's struggle against patriarchy, religious patriarchy, state patriarchy, societal patriarchy of the market, have not gone away. Look at this cleric. His name is Al-Marashi. And on one level, he represented both religious patriarchy and state patriarchy. He was a cleric in Mashhad. And so imagine a priest, but also somebody who worked on the provincial government. And what did he do? He resigned. Because the minute he resigned, what could he say? I'm no longer taking part in the patriarchy of the state. The minute he resigns from his government post, what is he? Now he's just a religious cleric. And what does he attack? The Islamic part of the Republic. By attacking what? They're officially called the Guidance Patrol. They're not known as morality patrols. And what did he say? He's basically saying our religion has come down to what is right or wrong being dictated by simply the way a woman appears in public. And why does he have a problem on that? He's basically saying there are other problems in our government. Corruption, social justice, wage gaps, the 1% versus the 99%, drugs, poverty, and freedom of expression. This is the greatest threat to the Islamic Republic, not the death of a single woman. It's what that death of a single woman was able to do. Abdul Hadi Marashi represents the elites of the state saying, because of the death of this woman, I am stepping down. I'm giving up power to attack the government. That was the greatest threat to the state. Okay. So when I wrote this article last year, Patriarchy, Power, and Protests in Iran, look what I said here. The protest is not in defiance of a religious taboo, where you had something unheard of in Iran, women going to the streets and taking off their veils. This is Iran's George Floyd moment. So, long time ago, a 3-year-old Iranian girl asked, why doesn't Islam order men to cover their eyes rather than women cover their hair? The thing is, Islam does. You see, over time, and this is an example of religious patriarchy, the idea of what is hijab got lost. Hijab doesn't translate into a veil. That's a mistranslation. Hijab simply in the Quran refers to a set of practices that deal with modesty. And technically, hijab, according to the Quran, would order all of these Muslim men to stop checking out this woman. It literally says, avert your gaze when a woman is in your presence. And that, by definition, is hijab. So in other words, this woman is absolutely right. But how did patriarchy change the meaning of hijab? Well, that's it. That's what patriarchy does. So when I concluded this lecture, this was in the year 2020. Here we are, 2023, going into 2024. How did I conclude the following lecture? With the following. Patriarchy, for those of you who are studying international relations, is the ultimate form of power. There is no power on the earth like it. If you doubt me, let me do this exercise with you for the following. Can anyone tell me a form of power more powerful than patriarchy? Let me do you this. Patriarchy, for most of you in this class, governs your past, present, and future. No other form of power can guarantee it. It can control your life like that, primarily women. Let me ask you this to prove my point, and ask yourself what else can do this to you, particularly women in the class. If I say patriarchy resists time, no form of power can do that. Then let me ask you the following question. And can I ask the following question with any other form of power? For women in this class, and men, I told you how patriarchy is practiced. I told you what patriarchs or who patriarchs. For every single woman in this class then, let me ask you this. Has anyone or an institution patriarched you in the past? Can any woman in this class say, growing up, I've never been patriarched? Not by my brother, not by my father, not by my mother, not by my school. Can anyone say this? I grew up a life without patriarchy. Okay, you're shaking your heads, very good. That's the past. Okay, how about in the present? Now, when I say this also affects men, look what I'm going to tell you, but for the women in this class. Is there somebody or some institution patriarching you as I speak? The thing is, you might not even know it. Is there somebody or some institution that is judging you solely based on your gender? Probably you might not even know it. And again, that's how power works. Power works best when it's invisible. Why did I conclude with RBG when talking about Iranian women? What did I say? This class isn't about Iranian women, it's about women. Let's look at this American woman. What did she say? What was her most famous line? She was asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? If any of you don't know about the American Supreme Court, there are 9 Supreme Justices. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the first. She was asked, when will there be, in your opinion, RBG, enough women on the Supreme Court? And what did she answer? When there are 9 women on the Supreme Court, that's when there will be enough. And everyone gasped. How outrageous is that scenario? And she asked, why are all of you surprised? You don't question the fact that there are 9 men on the Supreme Court, right? But when I suggest a scenario in the future, there could be 9 women on the Supreme Court, none of you can imagine it. What's that? What was RBG referring to? She was referring to the future. She was saying, even in the future, you can't imagine 9 female Supreme Court justices. What did that comment tell me? That means patriarchy can even govern your future. So again, now for the women in this class, let me ask you this. Have you been patriarched in the past? Are you being patriarched right now? Yes. Are you going to go into a particular job, a particular field? And this is why women in business exist. And are you worried it's a male-dominated field, I might not make it in it? Yes. And in that case, that patriarchs your future. Even your imagination, your ability to think of the future is controlled, edged in, managed. That's a form of power. What in your life has that power to govern your present, past, and future? What in your life has that power? I would argue none. I would argue there's nothing out there that competes. For men in this class, we can be patriarch. Whenever you are told your activity is not manly-like, too feminine-like, in theory, you've been patriarch. Okay. We are also, just like, can women patriarch? Do women often tell other women, you can't go out on the street like that, you'll look like a slut or a bitch? Okay. All right, very good. Men, can we patriarch also by using those words? Absolutely. Absolutely. So in other words, when I ended this lecture, right, I began talking with patriarchy in general. I just looked at the Islamic Republic. But with the exception of one of us, how many of us are Iranian? I know, Matt, you too. Okay, besides you two. But what I said about patriarchy in Iran, what did I do? It applies to every single one of us, you see. And that's the thing I want you to realize. This wasn't a lecture about an Iranian woman who was killed by the state. This is a lecture about each and every one of us partaking in acts and practices that persist to this very day. On that note, that's how I ended the RBG lecture. Do you have any questions, observations, sentiments you want to express?
I have a question regards to the hijab.
Mhm.
And basically you said that the hijab was used to control women, right? To like impose something on women or like why do you think in states that is not obligatory, why do women still wear it? Don't you think that
That's a really good question. This is the great point. So why do women wear this? You know, there's a debate in Islam. It's not universally agreed. Does the hijab mean women should cover their hair? There's no consensus about this. Do Catholics ever disagree? Every Catholic, by definition, who's a practicing Catholic, believes you have to be baptized, right? Otherwise, you're an unbeliever. Okay. Within, you see, there's no debate about that. Within Islam, there is an intense debate. Does the hijab in the Quran refer to women covering their hair? Okay. So then you ask them, why do women in states where it's not obligatory wear the hijab? You'll see women wear the hijab in Madrid. And here's the answer. Because it's their choice. And you see, this is what gets lost in the entire debate. Whether or not Islam enforces it or not. You see, Iran doesn't give women the choice in this matter. Neither does Saudi Arabia, neither does the Taliban. So the answer is, look what else we argue is a woman's right to choose. So again, this is now a much greater debate, and what kind of states and society do women have the freedom to choose how to appear in public or what to do with their body? That's the key element. That's the whole argument in all of this. That's the first victim in a patriarchal state, is a woman's ability to choose. Now, the minute I said that, then, first victim in a patriarchal state is the right of a woman's ability to choose. Can I use that sentence and refer to another state that considers itself the paragon and beacon of freedom? Is there another state that denies the right of a woman to choose? Obviously, okay. And that's the whole point of this lecture, is to put everything in a relative perspective. Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Very good question. Any others? Yes, Laura.
And so you said how like if the patriarchal state goes down, there'll still be patriarchy in the society. So how do you make sure that that decision is the woman's decision and not like influenced by father, brother, whatever? You know, like
How do you control societal patriarchy? You never will. You never will, unless this is the key. Societal patriarchy can only be fought through society, you see. You see, the state could try to enforce something. It will be resisted. So you have to fight societal patriarchy with societal measures.